What's up YouTube, this is William. Today I'm going to give you guys a behind the scenes look at shooting real estate. There's so much online when it comes to how to properly shoot, edit, and deliver to the client. So I wanted to come on here and tell you guys a little bit about my process and hopefully you can learn a thing or two. I've been super excited to make this video. I actually had a behind the scenes filmer come out so I could capture some shots, give you guys a little more context as to what I'm talking about. Let's jump right into things. So upon arriving to the property, we just started unpacking, getting things out. I usually start with photos for every shoot because I think it's the most valuable to the client. All right, so right off the bat, we're gonna be shooting with the Sony a6700 with the Sony f1.8 lens. This is an 11mm, but after the APS-C crop that you're gonna get on the a6700, it's gonna be around a 16 to 17mm lens equivalent in full frame. I wouldn't recommend shooting anything higher than like 22mm for these initial shots of the house. I think, it's essential to capture the whole space, so we don't want to be cropping in on anything. So I wrapped up getting my downstairs angles, really trying to capture more than less. At the end of the day, it's better to have a huge cache of footage that you can cut down on rather than missing angles. So as you guys can see in some of these shots, I'm clicking the shutter 3 times, and that's because I'm shooting HDR for these initial photos, which stands for high dynamic range. In post, I use Lightroom and I actually merge all 3 of those together. I'll get to more of that in the end. I shoot one photo at a very low exposure, -2, one at a middle exposure around 0, and then one at a blown out exposure at about +2. And then in post, we're actually gonna combine those 3 photos to get the best of both worlds. But I'll talk a little bit about that later and which software I use to make that happen. Okay, so as I'm wrapping up these photos, I want to be emphasizing the main parts of the house that buyers are really looking for. For example, the master bedroom is beautiful. There's massive windows looking out at the entire Big Sky mountain range, and it's something you definitely don't want to miss out on. Okay, so it's good to note here that at the end of the day, we only want 10 to 20 of the best photos. We don't want the realtor or the person we're doing photos for to have to look through, 50 plus photos. It's our job as the creative to figure out which things showcase the house the best. It's going to make realtors and people in the future want to work with you so much more if you make the process super simple. And what I mean is not giving 50 plus photos and all this extra raw stuff, just providing the best of the best because you took the time to figure out which things you think are the most important. Okay, so as we wrapped up these photos, I just hopped on my laptop just to make sure everything looks good. The last thing we want is for some reason, maybe some of the footage got corrupted or anything like that. I always just like to check, make sure everything looks good. I actually even uploaded this to my drive just in case. Okay, so I don't have too much footage of this, but basically we are flying the DJI Air 2S drone to get some photos. The Air 2S is honestly awesome for projects like this. I think I bought it used for about $500. It was a great deal, and this thing has been a beast. I've actually crashed it a couple times and it's still working perfectly. So I highly recommend if you're in the market for a drone. Okay, so when the drone is up in the air, I'm just getting all essential pictures of the house. Nothing too crazy to note here. Okay, so after we finished up the drone photos, I wanted to use the Tamron 17 to 70 lens just to get some shots of more close-up interior design angles and stuff like that. This isn't really for the realtor, the owner of the house. There was actually an interior designer on set who put together this house beautifully. So I wanted to provide some value to her. It only took me an extra 5-10 minutes, so I might as well. Okay, so this is what the industry is all about. Just helping out people like the interior designer with some extra photos. It's not required of me. The owner of this home did not ask me to do it, but it's those kind things that go a long way on set, and I know that she will refer me to anybody down the line if somebody needs photos or video. Okay, so for video, I'm using the Sony FX30. It is spectacular for almost everything video. It does 4K 120, 422 10-bit color, and so much more. It has an internal cooling fan, which is awesome when you're shooting in those high frame rates. So I absolutely love it for projects like this. So for pretty much all of the gimbal shots, I'm gonna be using the DJI Ronin RC2 gimbal. It's kind of a mouthful. but it's a pretty good gimbal. I've used it for about 2 years now, and it's spectacular. For real estate video, I always recommend using a gimbal, especially getting those establishing shots. And for video, we're gonna be using the Sony f1.8 11mm again. It's gonna be great for getting the wide establishing shots. For real estate videos especially, the client is not looking for a flashy edit. They're looking for something that any buyer would be interested in looking at. Something that is clean, quick, and to the point. Especially for these real estate videos, a more simple video is always going to be better. I see way too many videographers going over the top with editing, music, stuff like that. Guys, we want to keep it super simple. I'm not trying to say that those flashy real estate videos we see on Instagram are not cool and effective. I just think for the beginners trying to get into video and real estate, we need to keep it super simple and effective. Video is actually my favorite part about real estate. I love filming, editing, everything between. So this is what I look forward to during my shoots, and as you can see, I'm super locked in, but I'm absolutely loving it. Even at one point, my camera guy was like, bro, you have not said anything to me, and I'm like, dude, I am locked in. Okay, so after we wrapped up with video on my camera, I wanted to circle back and grab some drone video of the property. Again, I'm using the DJI Air 2S for this, just shooting in 5.3K at 30 FPS. It's kind of frustrating you can't do 60 FPS in the highest 5.3K setting, but I guess that's just how it is when they created it. So you actually have the option to shoot in 4K 60 on the DJI Air 2S, but I always choose not to. You get a pretty cropped in look when you do that, and I always love how wide it is with the 5.3K. So I'd rather stick to the 30 FPS and then keep my hands a little more still, maybe go a little slower. I just always think it looks better in the end. So I also have the Mini 4 Pro drone, but whenever I can, I'm gonna use the larger drone because it has a better sensor, better quality, everything like that. That's what I always recommend. You know, if it's accessible, probably use the better drone, but if you're on a pinch, it's always fine to use some of the smaller DJI drones like the Mini 2, 3, or 4. Guys, they're honestly all good. It's all about the user and, you know, getting the proper shots. So with drone video, I always go a little over the top, get a little too much footage, but if you have the time like I did on set, then I'm always going to do a little more than less. You might as well. Actually, in this scenario, I had about 4 hours to shoot, so I made sure to take my time on everything when it came to the photos, to the video, to the drone stuff. Okay, so after we wrapped up with the drone footage, that is going to be everything we need to capture. So I just got everything packed up and ready to go back. So I bet you guys are wondering, what does my post-production look like? Okay, so for post-production on photos, we're gonna be using Adobe Lightroom. I like to recommend Adobe Lightroom for beginners just because of its user interface. It's not super complicated. Anybody who has stepped foot in Adobe Lightroom Classic knows that it is a beast. I even still use normal Lightroom for most of my work. It honestly has all of the features I need, and there's almost nothing that I need from Lightroom Classic. Okay, so in Lightroom Classic, we are going to be merging all of these HDR photos, basically just taking the highlights and shadows and then bringing all three pictures together in one, making sure that the outside in all of our photos is properly exposed and the inside is properly exposed. Guys, I wish it was as easy as combining all three photos and getting a perfect picture, but it is not, unfortunately. So what I actually have to do in Lightroom is create a mask and draw on the windows and all of the outside parts. And then what we're gonna do is lower the exposure on those specific parts. I just wanted to give you guys a rough outline on how I edit my photos in Lightroom. Especially for real estate pictures, we don't wanna do anything flashy in post-production. If anything, we want to make everything look as neutral and normal as possible. That means getting the white balance to where we like it. And then what I also like to do is lower the contrast by about -20 on every single photo. That gives it a more dull look, which is typically what realtors and people are looking for. And once we're done editing all these photos, which is around 30 to 40, I'm going to put together the best 10 to 20 that I think the client and homeowners will like to see. There's a reason I don't suggest to the client that we make a 50 photo package. And that's because it's not actually best for them. I'm not going to oversell or give my clients something if they don't actually need it, and I think you guys should do the same. For shooting real estate or honestly any other industry, guys, it's about being kind of a consultant, talking to them, understanding their needs, and then providing deliverables based off of what they actually need. Say for example, a client says they want a 5-minute social media video. You probably should tell them that that's not a great idea. I know in the short term, you're going to make less money if you were to provide a 2-minute video rather than the 5-minute social media video to the client. But long term, the client is going to see so much more results from somebody who gives them professional guidance rather than a skewed approach that just makes you more money in the short term. If the client has a very set vision on doing something like that, I'm obviously not telling you to, go against that. All I'm saying is to provide some extra guidance and support when you are creating these packages and deliverables. The client's going to respect you a lot more and see that you're in it for so much more than just the money. So for this shoot, the client only paid for photos. And what I actually did is, you guys saw me shoot video and drone video and stuff like that. So I actually created a free video for him. I'm not saying on every shoot you should slash your prices or add more deliverables. But what I am saying is to be conscious that they might have other projects in the future, and obviously they're going to consider and want to work with you more if you're the guy who went the extra mile. And in this scenario, it probably will help because he has a much larger development going up in Big Sky, and I want to be the guy when it comes to video. So why don't I make something for him and then he can see how it correlates to his future project. That's just how I work with this stuff. Some people are totally different, and what they say they're gonna deliver, that's all they deliver. I completely respect that. I just think you shouldn't completely sleep on the fact of giving a little more, and then the client is going to be wanting to work with you more in the future. So with this video, I edited it all in Premiere Pro. That's what I've been using for years. I recommend to anybody getting into video, or if you're even moderate in the space, I think Premiere Pro is awesome. Definitely the most tutorials on YouTube for sure. A lot of people like to use DaVinci. I haven't dove in too far into it, but all I can say is I think Premiere is a little easier to work on. If you have the Adobe Suite, it's obviously a no-brainer to use Premiere Pro, but if not, I know that DaVinci actually is offering a discount, and I think it's a little bit off. I know the Adobe Suite can get expensive, but I think it's worth it considering you can get, Lightroom, Illustrator, Premiere Pro, and like so many other things. I'm not gonna get too technical into how I edited this video. I'll just tell you that the way I start is importing all the clips. I cut out all the bad stuff, and then from there, I use my creativity and kind of piece together a timeline. But the video is definitely, it takes time, skill, and also it's not something that you learn overnight. I think the hard thing with video is there is no right way to do it. Unlike photos and real estate, there is a specific way you need to shoot to properly capture a space. But with video, it's very stylistic, and you need to have a vision for what you are creating. Fortunately, I've always been pretty good at knowing what I want to make for a video. It definitely can get rough sometimes when you kind of lose sight of what you want and you're just stuck editing for hours on end. This video was actually not too hard to make. I was just kind of in the flow and pieced it together in about 3-4 hours. The client absolutely loved the package I delivered with the photos and video. It's exactly what he was looking for and more. So I'm super excited to work with him in the future. So this was my behind the scenes look at shooting real estate. I hope you learned some things, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Thanks so much.